Welcome to the Allen Press webinar, Finding Quality Reviewers. I'm Joanna Gillette, Product Marketing Manager at Allen Press, and I'll be your host today. On your screen, you should see some general information about participating in the webinar. I'm going to go over a few of these items before we get started. Our presenter will be answering questions at the end of the webinar. If you do have questions, please use the chat function of WebEx to direct questions to the webinar host, that's me, during the presentation. We're using voice over IP technology to broadcast the audio for today's webinar, so please make sure you have the volume turned up on your PC if you're having trouble hearing. Voice over IP quality may vary depending on network traffic today. So if you are having trouble hearing, please call in to listen to the webinar over our conference line. The toll-free telephone number and participant passcode for the conference line are listed next to the green telephone icon on this slide. You can continue the conversation with us and your fellow attendees after the webinar using the Discussions tab of the Allen Press Facebook page. Here, you can post a comment, share an idea, or ask a question. Today, Elena Webster will share some ideas for identifying new reviewers. She'll discuss ways to keep your reviewers happy, encourage quick quality reviews, and find the best reviewer match for each paper. Elena started her career in scientific publishing with Elsevier in St. Louis, Missouri, where she worked from 2005 to 2007. While there, she was directly responsible for sourcing reviewers, maintaining reviewer schedules, and ensuring quality reviews for respiratory and radiographic imaging titles. She began her term with Allen Press in late 2007. Here she oversees managing editing for six titles, including Cleft Palate Craniofacial Journal, Cytologia, Southern Economic Journal, International Surgery, Chelonian Conservation and Biology, and the Turtle and Tortoise newsletter. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Elena now. Don't forget to use the chat box on the lower right of your screen to send in your questions.
Thanks, Joanna. Let's go ahead and get started. So, the way we see it, there are about 4 steps or topics for finding quality reviewers. The first thing you need to do is identify new reviewers, which is just what it sounds like. How do you create or add to a reviewer pool? Next, then you assign these reviewers to a manuscript. And we need to talk about who should be choosing the reviewers and how do you choose the right reviewer for an article. Once you have a reviewer, you want to encourage quick and quality reviews. So how do you keep your reviewers deadline focused without sacrificing quality? And finally, you want to keep your reviewers happy, because this helps maintain quality and it ensures reviewers keep reviewing for you. So jumping right in, how do you identify new reviewers? Current or previous authors can be a good source of potential reviewers. You'll want to make it clear to your authors that you're looking for people with publication and research experience, as well as a solid background in the topic at hand. Reviewers with a good understanding of the peer review process will just make things that much easier. There's a lot less hand-holding if they kind of know what they're doing. You may include a gentle reminder that as participants in scholarly publication themselves, they have an obligation to their field to see that other research is just as rigorously reviewed as checked. So can other authors suggest reviewers? Requiring authors to submit reviewer suggestions is another way to add to your reviewer pool. Authors are most likely to know other individuals in their field and can recommend reviewers for their area of expertise. However, authors may also introduce bias by only providing the names of colleagues or friends, so you'll want to double check the people that they are recommending. A few other ideas. You could include a question to reviewers at the end of a questionnaire you provide them, asking them to recommend other reviewers. There are also several searchable databases available. Most of these there's a paid fee to use them, but a couple that come to mind are Cybers, Scopus, which is run through Elsevier, or Web of Science, which is done through Thomson Reuters. Another very simple way is to issue a call for reviewers that can be done either in print or online. Just make sure it's easy for interested individuals to access and provide information regarding the review process. So next, how do you assign reviewers? Who may be best qualified to assign reviewers, and how do you choose the correct reviewers for a paper? Before you begin assigning reviewers, you may want to consider using an online peer review system if you're not already. Some basic functions and helpful features of most online peer review systems are an author submission portal that facilitates online file submission and uploads, as well as the ability to track the metadata of each submission, including keywords, which can be helpful when trying to select a reviewer. An editor or administrator portal that allows key staff personnel to access author and reviewer accounts and profiles and assist in managing section editor or reviewer assignments is also usually included. Another feature is an automated follow-up or reminder email system, which can greatly lessen the burden of the staff members responsible for tracking down late reviewers and authors. Also, all users will have the ability to access and track multiple revisions of the same paper, which lessens the amount of, or the different versions of a manuscript that can be floating around, which is kind of confusing. Most online peer review systems also communicate in some way with the journal's production team to help move the paper from review, revision, and acceptance to the final stages of publication. Whether or not you're using a peer review system, there are, as we see it, essentially two options for choosing a reviewer. First, having an expert assign reviewers is one avenue. Someone such as an editor-in-chief, co-editor, or associate editor. These people are ideal in some ways because for their position, they should have access to many individuals in the field, and they have the necessary clout to compel people to respond. They also have working knowledge of specific areas of expertise and possibly individual workloads and responsibilities. For example, your editor-in-chief may know that Dr. Smith is an expert in endocrinology, but she may also know that he's currently very busy working on his own research study and probably doesn't have time to participate in a review right now. On the other hand, using an expert can result in inconsistent reviews if people are largely unavailable or if they are just agreeing to review to impress the expert. You're also relying on the availability of the expert, and we all know what editors, co-editors, etc., they tend to be very busy people. Further, while experts have a good working knowledge of the field, they by no means know everyone in the field, and you risk missing out on reviewers simply because they have not met the expert or are new to the field. This focus on only the people one individual knows can also lead to a fairly small pool of invited reviewers. Your next option is having designated staff members who choose reviewers, but this also has its pros and cons. Staff members, by nature of being paid to perform a particular duty, are almost always available to source, request, and track reviews, which can lead to more consistent reviews. However, the quality of the database is essential in this situation. Without a good system in place to search for reviewers, a staff person with little first-hand knowledge of the field is not going to be able to select quality reviewers. Databases often rely on information provided by authors or reviewers, which can be vague or inaccurate. Also, if the database is not large enough, you risk inviting the same individuals repeatedly, exhausting your pool of reviewers, or risking poor reviews. Likewise, finding someone to review a niche or specialized topic can be troublesome for someone without intimate knowledge of the field. An online peer review system could be especially helpful to the so-called lay staff person. If you're using a database to select reviewers, here are a few tips for making it work to your advantage. Have potential reviewers submit their areas of expertise. You'll need to create a list of possible topics for reviewers to choose from. This is another situation in which an online peer review system might be helpful, as most already have lists built, and you can simply choose those topics that best fit your discipline. You want your list to be specific, but not so specific that reviewers are overwhelmed by the number of choices they need to sort through. You can use keywords or classifications from the paper to match reviewers to an article. Many online peer review software packages can do this for you, but you can also do it by hand if the size of your database allows. Having each reviewer submit a CV can also be a good way to make sure they have experience in the field you're considering asking them to review. Now, there's also a sort of halfway point between the expert choice and the staff choice. An expert can create a list of reviewers he or she feels would be appropriate for a topic, and the staff member can then manage the process of contacting reviewers, finding alternates in the list, if one of the first choices isn't available, etc. You can also ask reviewers to rate themselves. When you're trying to narrow the field of candidates, you may find it helpful to ask a reviewer for some feedback on their background and work habits. The questions listed on this slide come from a reviewer questionnaire used by the American Journal of Health Promotion. In addition to answering these questions, which are given in an A, B, C, D multiple choice format, the reviewer is asked to submit a current CV. The editor-in-chief then reviews the form, looking at the areas of expertise, and the responses to questions at the end of the form. If the reviewer has enough areas of expertise selected, or it's an area of expertise that has very few reviewers, and if the reviewer's CV confirms that he or she has research experience, then the editor-in-chief will add this reviewer. If the form indicates that a reviewer needs guidance, the editor-in-chief is mindful of this and provides appropriate feedback after each review. Each reviewer receives a grade and, if necessary, comments from the editor-in-chief or associate editor-in-chief. After completing a review, reviewers are graded on a subjective scale of meets standards, exceeds standards, or does not meet standards. The journal encourages reviewers to resign if they do not meet these standards consistently. Finally, when selecting reviewers for a particular paper, it is very important that you keep the ethics of scientific publishing in mind. For liability purposes, it is key that you require reviewers to disclose any ethical complications or conflicts of interest they may have. These could range from involvement in the study to current participation in a similar study or line of inquiry. If using an online peer review system, a simple checkbox or electronic signature field that requires reviewers to disclose any conflict of interest before completing the review can be quite helpful. The links listed on this slide are from the American Chemical Society website, which we feel has an exemplary ethical policy for reviewers. Of course, dishonesty is always possible, but by creating a clear policy and requesting conflict of interest information from potential reviewers, you will have taken what steps you can to ensure that your peer review system is free from bias. So, now that you have your reviewer, how do you ensure they come through? Make sure you provide your reviewer with everything they need to complete the review to your expectations. Do you have clear, up-to-date, and easily accessible instructions? Have you given them enough time to complete the review? Most journals have a standard review completion timeline, but if you know the paper you've asked them to review is particularly long or dense, an extension might not be out of order. Is your review process such that a new reviewer might need a bit of training? Some online frequently asked questions or FAQs about reviewing or even a session on how to review at your next meeting might be helpful. You also want to make sure that you have frequent contact with the reviewer during the review process. Nothing is more frustrating than trying to get answers to questions and not being able to find the correct person to contact. So make sure this person is easily accessible. It's very clear who this person is. Send a reminder email before the review is due. You're much more likely to get an on-time response that way. And finally, answer any queries from the reviewer quickly. Again, this just speeds up the timeline if they're not waiting on responses from you. And this is where you sweeten the pot a little, so to speak. You've heard it before, but seriously, a simple thank you can go a long way toward making your reviewers feel like they are a vital and integral part of the publication process. Another option is providing discounts on the registration fee for conferences or meetings. This is a nice bonus. Free copies of the journal, subscription discounts, recognition in the journal or on your website. All these things can make the reviewer feel important. Providing continuing education credits can also be a great incentive to review, especially if your field requires a certification every year or so. However, you will want to set rigorous standards for a review that meets the CE credit expectations, and obviously you'll need to correspond with your accrediting or governing body to work out the details. Referring to our earlier American Journal of Health promotion example, the reason they feel comfortable asking so much of their reviewers is because they set aside a fairly significant budget for reviewer perks. They do provide free copies of the journal and significant discounts at their annual conference. Asking reviewers for their input will not only make them feel important, but it can also help streamline your review process. A few simple questions such as, was the review process easy to understand? Was the timeline manageable? Did you feel your review was useful? These can all help the reviewers feel like they have an outlet for any frustrations they felt during the process, and it'll eventually make your process a lot easier on everyone. Maintain your database. By keeping your database up to date, you will reduce the number of potential reviewers who decline or are unreachable due to outdated contact information. Update the information frequently, possibly by requesting that those in the database review their information yearly. You can also send a feedback survey at this time. Keeping your reviewers happy. Now that you have your reviewers and they've completed the review, how do you ensure they continue reviewing for your journal? Make sure reviewers know what you expect up front, and make sure it's something a reasonably busy but responsible adult can accomplish. You need to give a clear and manageable deadline. You also need to make sure their focus of their review is clear, so reviewers can focus their comments. Do you want it to mainly focus on content, or do you want them to point out poor grammar usage and adequate writing? Is English language usage a focus of the review? Again, make sure you have clear, concise reviewer guidelines, and make sure they are easy to locate. Either send them to each reviewer with the review materials or give a link to their location on your website. If follow-up reviews will be required, make sure your reviewers know this up front. Don't surprise a busy professional with more work they didn't know was coming. It's pretty simple, but make sure all the files for the paper itself, as well as review questionnaires, etc., are ready, available, and easy to access. You don't want your reviewer frustrated from the get-go because your materials aren't available or easy to find. Along the same lines, keep any online setup, such as entering their information into a reviewer database or uploading files, as simple as possible. You don't want reviewers to have to spend an hour or more just getting set up to review. Even though you've done everything you can to make the process run as smoothly as possible, remember that reviewers are people, and as such are not capable of superhuman feats. It's been said before, but allow a reasonable amount of time to complete the review. You're not going to get adequate or specific feedback from a rushed reviewer. Make sure you have enough people to review the number of manuscripts you receive annually. If you have too few reviewers and they're always being bombarded with requests to review, they're going to start saying no. While most reviewers will do their best to complete the work on time, there are always situations that arise, both professionally and personally. You're, I hope, not asking reviewers to put their careers or personal lives on the line for an article. So be accommodating and understanding if they ask for an extension or are unable to complete the review. Of course, if this becomes a habit, make a note in your file. Don't keep them guessing. Along the lines of knowing their review was useful, many reviewers like to see the results of their labors. Give them access to other reviews, editorial comments, and the final decision on a manuscript. They may not always like the results, but at least they'll know why and how the decision was reached. Finally, say thank you. It's been said before, but it really can't be overstated. While you should immediately let a reviewer know his or her feedback has been received, a separate thank you email can go a long way. It makes the reviewer feel important, and they're much more likely to continue to review for you if they feel their contribution was noticed. Okay, so what if you're already doing everything we suggested and you're still having trouble finding the right number of qualified reviewers? If that's the case, you might consider changing your process up just a bit. Start by considering the following options. Are you using an open or blinded review process? In some particularly small fields, open is really the only option since everyone working within the discipline already knows everyone else. However, for larger fields of study, a single or double-blinded review process can make reviewers and authors feel more comfortable giving real criticism and feedback. Just to review, for those of you who may not know, an open review is one in which both the authors and the reviewers know the identity of the other party. For a single blind, the reviewers are aware of a paper's author, but the author is not made aware of the reviewer's identity. By now you've probably figured out what a double blind is, but it's a review in which neither author or reviewer knows the identity of the other party. Giving the reviewers space to be honest without having to worry about hurting a close colleague's feelings or creating professional tension can increase the critical quality of the reviews you receive. A few final options to consider are the number of reviewers required per paper. Is asking for too many people slowing down your review process and overburdening your reviewer pool? Are your current instructions or the process itself too complicated? If so, and if you're getting a lot of questions from confused reviewers, it might be time to consider simplifying your current methods. If you are interested in considering a much more substantial overhaul of your peer review process, you can visit our website to see videos from our 2011 Emerging Trends Seminar for some innovative ideas from our session, Perspective, Rethinking the Structure of Peer Review. So, how do you find quality reviewers? First, if you don't have an existing pool of candidates, find a way to get some names and email addresses. Whether it's authors, other reviewers, or a professional database, you need people to get things started. Next, using either an expert or staff personnel, select people you feel are most qualified to review a specific topic. Remember that using an online peer review system can greatly simplify your process and may take a lot of the grunt work out of the equation. Make sure your reviewers have adequate resources and the point of contact for the duration of their review, and remember, a little extra incentive never hurts. Finally, be clear in what you expect. Be reasonable in your expectations, and say thank you when the job is done. I hope you found this information helpful. I'm going to turn this back over to Joanna now, and we're going to open things up for questions.
Thanks, Elena. We do have a couple of questions. Do feel free to continue chatting in your questions as we continue the QA session here. A few people asked if the slides will be available on our website after we're done here, and indeed they will be available, should be on by the end of the week. I know there were a few slides in Elena's presentation that contained links out to some other resources, so we'll be sure and get those up so that you have an opportunity to access those online, and you'll receive an email once those are online so you know they're available. I also had one question asking what the standard number of reviewers is. So how many reviews do you normally receive for each paper?
I would say that 2 to 3 reviewers is probably standard. You definitely need at least 2 so that you can have a couple different opinions. 3 might be more helpful in case you have 2 very different opinions. Any more than that, and especially for a journal article, any more than that, you get into having to track down multiple reviewers. There are going to be people who say no, and then, or if it's a late review, it really goes on your process if you have too many people reviewing. I would say 2 to 3. Okay.
And can you give us an idea of what an appropriate expectation for the timeline of a review would be? So how long should our reviewers have to complete an assignment?
Probably really depends on the average length of article for your particular journal. If your journal tends to average, say, 6 to 8 pages per article, I would say 3 to 4 weeks is probably adequate. However, some journals have very lengthy articles. I work for one journal that routinely has articles that are 20 or more pages, and that's printed. So your manuscript, you're looking at probably 50 to 60 pages of manuscript. You're going to need to give people more time to get through an article that's that long if you want an adequate review. So for that, I would say maybe 5 to 6 weeks.
Okay. It doesn't look like I have any more questions, so I think we'll go ahead and close this afternoon. I want to thank Elena. Oh, wait, I do have a question. Hold on. Okay, really more of a suggestion from Deborah Gold, who let us know that they use 2 blind reviewers and 1 associate editor who knows who the author is. And with those 3 opinions, she feels they have a strong base for providing feedback to the author and making a realistic decision. And she also likes that the associate editors have good contact with the author so that they can communicate. So that's an excellent suggestion as well. If you really don't feel you have the reviewer pool to support 3 reviews on a paper, it might be a good idea to utilize some of your other staff, some of your supporting editors or associate editors. Maybe just have 2 reviewers, but then have an extra person reading the paper who's not technically a reviewer. That's a great suggestion. Thanks, Deborah. I don't see any other comments coming in, so I think we will go ahead and sign off. Again, I do want to thank you for being with us today. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and that you'll consider trying some of Elena's suggestions to help your journal find more quality reviewers and to increase the quality of reviewers that you already have. We will be sending out a brief survey that will include links to both the slides and a video recording of today's session, so please do take a few moments to complete the survey. We're always looking for feedback on how we can improve future webinars and suggestions for future topics. And don't forget, you can continue the conversation on Facebook. That concludes our session for today.